Welcome to Tip TV Finance, where we're joined by a special guest, Lawson Muncaster, who is the co-founder and managing director at City A.M. How are you today, Lawson?
Very well, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Lots going on in the political world, lots going on in the financial world. How does City A.M. keep up with all of this?
It's been an eventful weekend. Whether it's a pointful weekend or a pointless weekend, I don't know. City A.M. has been around for 11 years. And obviously politics is high on the agenda of any business decision or business trend, etc. We have 40 journalists, very much a sort of 24/7 content business now. It's so diversifying away from the paper, but that still is our statement, our integrity, if you like. I think keeping abreast of what we deliver to the business community, and I mean that from we're not really taking sides. I think it's very fair to say that we're a libertarian paper, and we believe in capitalism, but we also believe in laws. You know, when people do things badly, they should be punished legally. And sometimes in this country, we're not as strong as maybe our American cousins when it comes to people doing things naughty when it comes to the world of business. But you know, not to belittle that, I think it's very important for us to communicate the story in two parts, or sometimes three or four, but to give a balanced view. And I think Brexit was probably one of the best examples of that. I think that our audience, our readership, was totally divided. I think if you worked for a big bank or a multinational, I think the tendency was to lean towards very much staying within the European system as is. And I think if you were younger, more hungry, more entrepreneurial, with less access to legal or accounting practices, etc., you're probably saying, well, actually, maybe it's better us to leave the European Union. So we had to give that statement out in a balanced way, and really to be taking a side like other newspapers did, I think would have been naive of us. So I'm kind of proud of what Christian and the team did on that, leading up to the Brexit vote.
Well, I think there's a few points to come through from the. I mean, you said you've been going for 11 years. It's clear that you've established a user-friendly brand, and it's interesting enough to read the newspaper on the tube, even if you're not necessarily that interested in the financial markets, which is in a way the acid test of what you're doing. The second point from the original question I asked you is that it's about how you've been coping with the all the events, but there is the threat of social media, or do you see social media as a threat to journalism and to journalists?
That's a very good question. I think that, let's be honest, if you want to take just simple numbers, there's now 6 billion journalists in the world through the social media world. Less one. I'm unfortunately not a great Twitter or Facebook follower for my own reasons. But I think that what journalism is, and proper journalism, I think has actually become far more important. It's far more influential if you have followers, be that in the social media world, or people actually just reading blogs, etc., from a newspaper.
That's another thing. You need to be. I mean, we've seen the emergence of the commentator rather than the journalist. And if you're a good enough journalist, then you become known as commentator. So it's like a hierarchy there. And you've got your 50,000 followers, and it's Mr. Smith. So what do you think about Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? But that's the reporting part is being eroded by social media.
The reporting part, in terms of how the message is spread, is certainly changing through social media. I think from a news gathering business and actual creative of journalistic tendencies of the old day, I think that authority and that empathy you have with the reader is still very important. And obviously there's more people reading City A.M. online today than there was reading the paper today, for example. However, I would say that in 2016, we're reaching 400,000 London business people a week through the paper. And that adds to the integrity to all the stories that go on online. I think you just have to look back in the last 12 to 18 months. Any great investigative journalist story that's come out has had the big brand behind it, be the New Times newspaper, the Telegraph, or Good Sell City A.M, and further internationally, the Old Wall Street Journal, etc. So I think the naivety of saying that the newspaper print edition is in a dead way is wrong.
But one of the issues has been, say, with the Brexit debate, also with the Donald Trump coming in. Those are both, let's say, not the liberal lobbies don't exactly didn't like either of those scenarios or ideas, and so they just tended to report whatever they wanted to happen and their agenda, and that's not journalism, is it?
No, and I think there's a real, I think both in America and Brexit, we've got two lessons to learn here. Regardless what's trending, regardless who's following what, the people of a country still have a democratic right and a voice. And I would go as far to say is that if you take an institution like the BBC, who I have a great follow of, and I think it still is the most impressive global broadcasting business out there, in the UK, I think it's very difficult to justify a story which has got maybe 2 or 3% of the population in agreement and 50% of the population in opposite of that fact, and yet reporting that content on a 50-50 relationship, or 50-50 ratio, should I say. That's not proper journalism. And I think that both what happened at Brexit and what's happened with Mr. Trump in America has highlighted that issue. You know, the polls got it wrong. Media in general has got it wrong.
They got it wrong because they didn't want it to happen.
They didn't want it to happen, and it was politically
I've never
incorrect.
seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never been seen before, that type of scenario.
Yeah, and I'm quite fortunate in many respects to live in Scotland and move and work to London on a weekly level. And you know,
Keeps you in touch with the reality.
Absolutely, and you know, I think on the Brexit side of things, I was incredibly naive in that I live in Scotland, and Scotland was very much pro-stay in Europe. And you know, we have a business in London that London was very pro to stay in Europe. And if it wasn't really for our editor Christian May and saying, no, Lawson, there's more people out there outside of your little world of Scotland and London that are very, very angry. This is not just a landslide that you think it's going to be. So I was quite on the, not necessarily hedging my bets, but I was unsure on that night when I went to bed on Thursday, thinking that actually Britain was going to belong to the European Union and that this thing wouldn't have happened. That in itself has to be addressed by broadcasters. It has to be addressed by mass media, and I still include newspapers in that. And they've got to give a more balanced view, because I think both in the old days of elections, Brexit, Donald Trump, Clinton, most of these establishments are taking a side very quickly.
So why don't you just take a side? Just do what everybody else does. Say, we are pro Clinton, we're pro Remain, or whatever. We're pro whatever's the next. Pro Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And just go with the flow, because that's what media outlets tend to do.
But I think that's irresponsible. I genuinely think we're not a traditional newspaper. We're a modern news content business, and some people will debate with me on this point. But I genuinely think we're the first news content business of the new generation that incorporates the print product rather than the last of the old. And I think it's very important for us to identify both points of view, whether or not it's politically correct or socially in vogue or whatever. We've got to represent what actually these things mean. And in both cases, both in Brexit and obviously now with Clinton and Trump, there is a yes and there's a no on both camps, and people have opinions. And it's not about 20% and 80%. These things went down to the wire. And I think you'll find in America, I'm not ignorant to assume that Donald Trump will win, but I think I'll take a bet that he'll be very close with the overall popularity vote in terms of percentage terms. I think that'll be very close. I think he would have to have a great night in the casino to win those 6 or 7 sort of heads or tails stakes, to win all 7. Just flick a coin 7 times to get it right. And for one big state to have a big swing, I just don't think Trump will do that. But I think it's been a massive wake-up call for American politics, and I think politics in general globally. There is definitely now a dysfunctional relationship between the governing bodies of society, be that legal, government, parliament, lords, etc. I think that where we see the sort of legal rulings last week, what concerned me more than anything was a bit of them and us. Now, what the legal profession was doing was that election legal? That was the question they were asking themselves in reality. I think the British voted for us to leave Europe. In democracy, that's what we do, and we have to leave Europe, okay? Now, there might be certain differences of opinion, those that are represented in the legal world and something representing in the Parliament's world, and obviously the population in general. I would like to see these people working closer together to do a collective responsibility to taking our country forward, not this infighting that seems to be happening, you know, on a global level, certainly in the US and ourselves. And that's disappointing.
It wasn't. It was also disappointing. The judiciary could have said this is not a judicial.
Well,
the people have already decided it's nothing to do with us anymore.
That's right, and I think that. But when on the converse of that, where I have a little bit of sympathy, is if you're someone like Mishcon de Rea and the other two legal firms that were employed to actually look at it on a legality basis, in which they're employed to do. That is not their fault. That's what they're assuring that the legal framework in place. Obviously, with the result, it's not in place, and that's that wedge I'm talking to.
It's one of those things. You know, they would say that, wouldn't they? I mean, it's Mandy Rice Davis all over again. There was no way the High Court would say either we're not going to get involved, or they were going to say don't refer it to Parliament. It couldn't happen.
Well, it would weaken them. You know,
shooting themselves in the foot.
Correct. So, it's not a big. It's for me personally, and I'm not speaking for City A.M, but I'm sure we'll come out with that in the forthcoming weeks and days. The British public have spoken. Right, let's get on with it. Okay. Now, let's get on with it is a man in the street terms. How that actually gets through the historic relationships that we've got with these different factions going on. Maybe that court case is a bit like, let's get on with it. You know, it is a start of moving to, I believe, Article 50 being invoked and us leaving Europe. Okay, so these things have to happen. We are, and you know, I'm very proud of being British. We do have a great legal system. I think we do take these things on the chin. I sometimes wonder when looking at it on TV, going, crikey, are we really behaving like this to the outside world? But deep down, I genuinely believe in what we do and what we've learned over these hundreds and hundreds of years, and we will do it in the proper manner. That's a very British thing, and something that is, I think, respected globally. You know, I do think that the actual leaving of Europe is a completely different question to that, and I think that the rest of the world probably looks upon Britain in the European context as the guys over there that are looking after it, and other stabilisers, if you like. And so I was saying, you know what, guys, we're coming out of something we think's broken, right? And that's not a conversation. But as by doing so in that position of respect and empathy that we have globally, I think we probably lost a little bit of brand equity in the decision.
Prestige, yes.
Possibly. Finally, yeah.
Finally, I just want to get back to City A.M. and the newspaper world.
You can get back to City A.M. whenever you want.
The newspaper world in general, maybe not on this point, but I noticed, I think, the Daily Telegraph swung from a profit last year or the year before to £100 million loss. They've got premium content now, as if just when you thought all their content was premium, it's apparently some you have to pay for and some you don't need to pay for.
Yeah.
Making money in this area, isn't it like owning a football team now? That, you know, it's almost like a loss leader on you know, it's a very difficult way of making money.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not titled, I'm certainly not wealthy, so I'm either doing something incredibly stupid or I totally disagree with what you say. I think that you know, newspapers have spent the last 20 years coming to grips with this wonderful thing called the web. And I think as we get on, I think that more and more people understand how great a sales channel is. Whether it's a editorial channel where you can create revenues from directly from the end user, is the trick that all these businesses face. I think with ourselves, there's no hidden facts. So, you know, we spent £8 million creating this paper called City A.M. in London, 2005. We distributed, I think, 35,000 copies. We now distribute over 100,000. Just to put that in context, when we first came in 2005, the FT sold 130,000 copies in London, and now they sell 25,000. So I would argue that maybe I have done something in building a business.
You're a disruptive figure.
Yeah, but also to understand the different way people accept news now. I mean, our job is to try to give people an opportunity to have up-to-date business news that can be downloaded within a 10-minute, 15-minute window. that through short stories, graphics, and utilising much more how people are receiving content online, yeah, so to fit in with their sort of natural day, if you like, allowing them to walk into their business day sort of prepared with a knowledge gap that they didn't have prior to consuming the paper. In terms of have we made money? No, we haven't. And but at the same token, what we now have is a newspaper over 100,000 copies circulating Monday to Friday, an online business delivering over 1 million uniques a month, 3 magazines produced monthly, an events business. And we're making this, and we've made this through the positivity of profitability in 2012-13. And the last 2-3 years we've been creating on how we see the online world working with our audience. I'm not saying it's right for everybody, and again, maybe a little bit more disruptive, but we've got against the grain of traditional journalism, and we're now, in content marketing terms, allowing businesses to write directly to our website in a project called City Talk. Yeah. And that what we believe is that by allowing those people to, very clearly marked, if you like, so it would be Tip TV Talk, and you can have as many people or as little people and write as much or as little as you want, and that'll sit in with this City A.M online product. I mean, it's going back to the old-fashioned retail model where, you know, Selfridges would sell a concession to Hugo Boss. You know, now, if the Hugo Boss product is wrong, they're not going to come and chase Selfridges. They're going to go and chase Hugo Boss. And I believe our readers, if someone abuses that trust, that partnership that we have with them, they're not going to be up in arms with City A.M. And through social media, they'll be very quick to identify what has been said. And it will not be City A.M. doing the getting into trouble. It'll be the brand that's used or misguided representatives in that partnership that we have. So I think having that honest relationship with our reader, that balanced view that we do. We don't hide from the fact we're libertarian. We don't hide from the fact we're pro-capitalist. Yeah, that is what we believe in growth, from the smallest to the largest. I mean, 2 years ago we had our Christmas appeals for Opportunity International in Africa, based on the premise that growth is good, handouts are not. And if you see how those things work on a microfinance level, it is very encouraging. And we want to continue to do that, because I think with growth, more taxis become available, and you can do things a lot better with that in mind. So again, you know, it is very much that City A.M.'s raison d'etre is that way.
Right, well, lest we are out of time, but Lawson Muncaster, co-founder and managing director at City A.M, thank you very much for joining us today.
Not at all, thank you.
We'll be back after the break.